Oh, anyway, good afternoon. It's Wednesday, the 31st of August 2016. This is only like a bit of an experimental movie in a sense, but I do intend to try and make up a movie at some point, really explaining some of the benefits and shall we say ideas and concepts and things in relation to travelling by train in the United States. And what surprised me was that we did a trip, Lottie and I did a trip in July, August 2014, and we had a fantastic time. We had a 15-day USA rail pass. Now, there are a number of things that need to be discussed in a sense to explain how the system works, and I will now sort of set some of that down because some people might be surprised by the facts that I will outline. Firstly, the USA Rail Pass is not at all similar or the same, let's say, as a Brit Rail Pass or a U-Rail Pass, both of which are unlimited, or can be. You can purchase unlimited travel passes for set periods, usually say 15 days, 30 days, and so forth. As you can with the USA Rail Pass, it's either 15, 30 or 45 days, which is pretty good. You can even get the one that covers Canada and the US, which is excellent value if you wish to have an extensive trip. So I suggest, say, 45 days in those two countries. First couple of clues is, as a pure railway enthusiast, let's say initially, you want to pick the most scenic and best trips available to you and travel on those. But you need a very delicate balance of a couple of nights here and there, of course, at different locations, and a couple of other scenic attractions, but not excessive amounts of time. In other words, 24 hours somewhere to cover, say for example, the Grand Canyon. We went from Los Angeles to Flagstaff and then out to the Grand Canyon. Now, my advice to anyone, whether Americans or overseas, is not to approach it at all from that direction. In other words, if you're travelling around the States and you happen to be taking the train from Chicago across through Albuquerque to Flagstaff, get off at Flagstaff, in other words, and then stay overnight, and the next morning there's a bus around 7 o'clock or so in the morning that takes you out, and you pay for the bus to go from Flagstaff out to the Grand Canyon. Now you'll have from 9 something, you'll have until about 6 p.m. You'll have all day in which to explore on the free bus services around the canyon. Go at the top of the canyon, in other words. You're looking at the various viewing points. You can see the Grand Canyon Railway Station or depot, or whatever you'd like to call it, and you can see the trains. And during the summer they are very popular, and I saw 2 trains there and hundreds of people who would be using those trains. Then my suggestion would be, of course, to book ahead on this and take the train then at 3:30 in the afternoon to Williams and get off at Williams, and you could have time for a meal probably and get a taxi or a bus. There is a bus connection to Williams Junction where you would board the train to LA. It's relatively straightforward and not extremely long trip, but it would probably be worthwhile having a sleeping berth on that. Another big clue is to use what they call roomettes. They're suitable for 1 or 2 passengers, and you always only pay one accommodations charge, and the second person upgrades in other words, pays for a sleeper, but they don't pay the accommodation charge. Now, explaining a sector, the 15-day passes cover 8 sectors. Now, a person might say, what is a sector? Well, to give you the answer to that LA to Flagstaff was one sector, and it was done because you got off and you had 24 hours there and you got back on the train. Well, the next sector was, for in our case, to Chicago. But if a person wanted to cover some fairly long journeys, each journey, even if it's virtually a transcontinental journey, is called, in other words, it's called a sector. So if a person, to give you an example, if you're flying in from Australia, an ideal destination would be Dallas. You would stay overnight in Dallas to get over the jet lag and have a look at things in Dallas. And in my case, I'd be interested in seeing the JFK sites. In other words, the book depository and Grassy Knoll and where the assassination took place and so on. I'm just interested in that kind of history. But the idea then would be to validate your USA Rail Pass, which you would have already purchased in Australia, for example, and ideally it naturally made all of the bookings on all the trips ahead of time and paid for them that you wanted to do. Because the summer season is very, very popular. A lot of sleeping berths are booked out weeks and even into months in advance, so you do that. Then the first sector might be, and this is only a suggestion, Dallas, and changing trains, by the way, doesn't count. So you go Dallas, Chicago, you might go to Milwaukee. That is one sector. You'd stay overnight in Milwaukee. You might then travel Milwaukee right across through St. Paul, and you'd end up at, say, like West Glacier Park, or the park stop for AMTRAK. In other words, you would already have booked the red bus tour of Glacier National Park, and then you do that from one of the stations. I guess from I think West Glacier, there's East Glacier. You may need to inquire which one has really the part that they have lodges, but they have also the red bus tour. That is the sector number 2, let's say. Then you may say, if you go from there, you're there for 24 hours, you go down, for example, to Portland and have another stop, that'd be sector 3. Now you may then go, for example, all the way, well, you could go to Oakland and have a night in San Francisco, or you could choose to go to LA, that'd be another sector. You'd have a 24 hours there, and another very long sector, if you chose to do this, might be LA across to New Orleans on the Sunset Limited. That's the entire journey is considered to be a sector. Then another sector would be, after looking at New Orleans and riding the streetcars and doing whatever a person chooses to do, the next sector might well be to go up to say St. Louis, and then you might go from there and you might go to Dallas and you might fly home. Now that's a nice big round trip, and you'll certainly do that as 8 sectors in the 15 days. I give this to you as an example, and some Americans have no idea that you can purchase this pass in the United States, domestically in other words, unlike in Australia where you cannot have an Austrail pass. You can't just go down the road and buy one, unfortunately. So the Americans have an advantage there, that they can actually go to an AMTRAK station and buy the pass, pre-book everything, their entire journey, and then they've done their holiday. But now I met someone, I'm not naming names, but we met someone who was traveling with his daughter, and we met them at Essex, Montana. Nice people and very helpful, and we managed to use their hire car to get the red bus tour, and they're very, very gracious and good and helpful, looked after us. Were able to use the tour that they'd booked on and so forth. But a lot of confusion there, but the red buses no longer serve Essex, Montana. In other words, the Isaac Walton Inn. As much fun as it is, most enjoyable stay can be had there, but there's no red buses. That's a very, very important thing to remember. So the big clue in rounding out what I'm saying here is that you would always buy the passes in advance, months in advance is ideal. Book everything, let's say 3 to 4 months before travel. Have everything all done and exchange. If you're coming from overseas like us, you go to, like we went to LA, by the way, and exchanged itinerary, as it were, all those bookings for a USA Rail Pass. Now, I won't get long-winded about this, but I made one error, which was not my fault. I just said yes to the very. She went, these places, these destinations, these times, this day, etc. She went through it. Now, I didn't notice that she booked us on a service that would have been impossible at the time to make a connection that we wanted. Now, we wanted to get a service at, say, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. She booked us on way at 6 p.m. Don't ask me why she booked us on that, around 6:23, if I remember correctly. I got into a lot of trouble over that with the conductor, and in the end, incidentally, I did report this to the chief executive of AMTRAK, and I'm sure the matter was corrected, because the particular lady conductor wanted to charge us, I think it was $68 each, to that Detroit Chicago sector, and it was ludicrous because we already had a USA Rail Pass. It is not as flexible, as I say. There's the Brit Rail passes or the Eurail Pass, because you can just go on any train, any time, you can go up and down and do any number of services that you want. There's no restriction. It's most important to point out there is a restriction on the USA Rail Pass in that regard, but those are the best hints, may I say, that I can give anyone who is a prospective traveller. So I would like to enlarge further on this at some other time, and I'm willing to help people if they contact me. But you could find me just on YouTube and just John Coyle, and on the Flickr, which is a great photo sharing site. You look up, go to Flickr, and if you haven't already got a page, you create one that's free, and you type in John Coyle photo, and you'll find my photos turn up, and you can contact me and make me a friend, or like whatever they do. I'm on Facebook as well, and you do all that. Now on the YouTube, if I have a channel with a couple of hundred videos. Now the fact is, they never used to allow more than 15 minutes, and you usually typically got 14 and a half minutes or something. And that was part 1 and part 2, and you went to 3. And it was quite annoying. I could have had videos that went to part 8 or 9. The point is this, that I now can have unlimited YouTube videos. I could put a video on an hour, or it wouldn't matter if it was an hour and a half. They are on there now, as of this year, I think, or even last year. But you can search it just by simply writing at YouTube, John Coyle video, and you'll find mine. I have mostly transport. I would describe it as 80% transport, mostly rail related, but I have a few family and other non-transport videos on there, and you can scroll through and just find one to suit you. I'd like very much for people to follow me on YouTube, and some of my movies have 2,000 and even 4,000 hits, which I think is quite good, if I may say so myself. So I hope you've found my hints and information of value to you. So thank you for viewing this.